U.S. Secret Service Director Kimberly Cheatle has admitted that her agency failed to protect Donald Trump against an assassination attempt in Pennsylvania on the 13th of July. Lawmakers have been expressing anger over how the gunman could get so close to the Republican presidential nominee when he was supposed to be being carefully guarded. The Secret Service has acknowledged that it denied some requests by the Trump campaign for increased security at his events in the years before this assassination attempt. Addressing Congress, Director Cheatle described it as the agency's most significant operational failure for decades.
Good morning, Chairman. The Secret Service's solemn mission is to protect our nation's leaders. On July 13th, we failed. As a director of the United States Secret Service, I take full responsibility for any security lapse of our agency. We are fully cooperating with ongoing investigations. We must learn what happened, and I will move heaven and earth to ensure that an incident like July 13th does not happen again.
Tegan Broadwater is a former police officer. He's now president of the security company Tactical Systems Network in Fort Worth, Texas. Welcome to DW. We just heard the Secret Service director there accepting full responsibility. So far, she's ignored calls to resign. Do you think she'll keep her job?
Well, that's a great question. It kind of remains to be seen, primarily because there was kind of a lot of grandstanding today and very few specific answers that she could give because their investigation is going to take a little longer, obviously. So it remains to be seen whether or not she's going to be kicked out, or obviously she's not going to step down on her own accord. But I think part of the problem is the only way that they're really going to salvage this is if there are definitive actions taken based on what the investigation uncovers. So as long as we don't really know what the investigation will yield, it's going to be difficult to guess whether or not she's going to be able to keep her position.
And given the investigation that is ongoing, as you say, from what you've seen, what do you think? Did the Secret Service screw up, or did the shooter get lucky?
Oh, I definitely think there was a screw up, and I think Director Cheatle has pretty much conceded that today, which I was glad at least that got out of the way, because there is no controversy as to whether or not balls were dropped. Balls were absolutely dropped, and whether or not there were enough people present in order to provide a proper detail or not, I do not think that additional personnel in this case would have helped, because that wasn't the excuse given as to why that building wasn't covered. I just think a long time without an incident breeds complacency, and I think somebody dropped a ball, and there was a lot of finger pointing at the beginning. But again, this investigation will uncover a lot more details. But I absolutely think there was a colossal failure on the part of law enforcement and the Secret Service.
So talk us through the sorts of preparations that are made ahead of an event like a political rally. How much say does the Secret Service have in choosing or advising on a location, for instance?
Well, they have pretty much security exclusivity in that regard, because they come out between 4, 5, 6, 7 days ahead of time and are scouting the area. They're learning about the crime statistics. They're profiling the people that are going to be there. They're looking at coordinating ingress and egress. They're looking at a large picture from the outside in and taking care of potential issues that could happen from those different aspects. And, thinking of it as, how would you actually pose a threat to your asset? And then how can you mitigate against that happening and leverage the cost versus gain and put it more in the costs for somebody to make such an attempt. So there's a lot of preparation going on there. There's a lot of interviews going on there. There are lots of coordination with other law enforcement and security entities. But ultimately, the Secret Service leads that entire operation, which is why they take the brunt of the accountability.
So talk to us about some of the balls that you think were dropped in the way that this was handled.
Well, number one, I think that obviously not enough attention was paid to the building that would have been, starting from the outside in, almost the first thing that you would look at. So the fact that there were some law enforcement personnel down below makes very little sense. I don't think the sloped roof is an adequate explanation as to why you didn't have someone on the roof. So I think that was the first ball that dropped, regardless of who was assigned.
Right.
The other was during the periods of time where there was communication between the Secret Service and law enforcement and the people who had seen this person climbing up on the roof. Again, there's more finger pointing about, we didn't get permission to take a shot or whatever that is. I mean, the fact is, if you're in law enforcement and you're assigned here or anywhere else, if there's a threat to humanity that comes about in your presence, you're taking care of it, period. So there really is no excuse there in terms of how that was handled. And I think that's the primary thing. There's no telling how many other aspects of this thing were mishandled. But obviously the big ball was the lack of expeditious communication and not even paying proper attention to the one point in which a threat could be executed.
A quick word, then, about the political climate in the US. Do you believe that it is more physically dangerous now than in decades past?
That's a great question. I think it's more politically charged and extreme, but I don't think the violence is increasing any more than it has been. I think as fast as word travels now, we get word on things that happen all over the United States in real time. So it sometimes feels like we're being attacked all the time and we have all these problems. But, this has been happening for a good period of time. We just have better ways of communicating in and out of how those things happen.
I suppose that's sort of reassuring. Thank you so much for talking us through that. Security expert Tegan Broadwater and Fort Worth in Texas. Thank you.
Thank you.